Ball with Mark Ferrante live at the Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill in East Norton. I'm Steve Pannone, and I think I'm joined by what I assume is a very happy coach as the Wildcats come away with a huge victory over the Temple Owls on Saturday at Lincoln Financial Field, 19-17. Coach, we were talking before we went on the air, and college football is a unique breed because it's the one sport really you don't get an exhibition game. You don't get a spring training. The NFL gets 4 games, and they play 30 games in spring training. In college football, that first Saturday this year in August, to start your season, you kind of go out there, and in football you never get what you expect. But let's start offensively. What did you think about your ball club?
Yeah, Steve, great to have you here again this year, and great to be at the Green Turtle. But, as far as what you just said, you never know what you're going to get. You're looking at the team from last year's film, and we're fortunate enough that we did play Temple last year, so we had a little better idea as who we were going against. But they did graduate some guys, as did we, so it's a new season, a new beginning. So without a scrimmage game under your belt and those types of things, you're always concerned going into the first game. The speed of the game is going to be faster, what you can do in practice, and so on and so forth. But as far as our guys coming out ready for the game and the way they come out of the tunnel, they were prepared, and they went out and with a lot of emotion and a lot of energy, and executed at a high level early on, especially. And we took the opening drive right down the field behind Zach, our quarterback, and Aaron Forbes, our running back, and everyone did a great job, especially on that open drive, and we just were able to sustain it throughout the game. So it was exciting to get that first victory.
You mentioned the speed of the game. Last year in the ball game, it took you guys really almost to the second half offensively to find your groove and play really well. You take the first 2 drives of this game, you go down and score a touchdown. So obviously, I guess a year's experience having Zach, and Aaron, as you mentioned, and Ryan Bell back. Talk about those first 2 drives specifically, the mix of run and pass, the balance you guys showed on offense to get the ball in the end zone.
Yeah, it was good. We definitely go into each game trying to have that balanced attack, be able to run the ball and pass the ball effectively. And last year we struggled a little bit in the run game, so we threw the ball a little more than we would want to a year ago against Temple. But, the opening drive, I think the opening play of the game, Forbes, he ripped off about a 17 or so yarder, and that just got the momentum, got all the guys excited. And then having Zach and Bell and good Zach back, all those guys that missed a big portion of last year, I think the fact that they missed a good part of last year made them more excited and hungrier to get into the game this year, and they definitely showed that on the opening couple drives.
And you talk about, especially in football, it's a game of emotion. You talk about how you guys ended last year with that emotional victory over Delaware, and we'll talk offseason and everything about that, but the ability to carry that over into your first game this year, to play with that kind of energy and emotion. Obviously, I'm a little biased, but it looked like you guys had an edge in that department throughout the whole game.
Yeah, we definitely talked about that in the offseason as far as how we finished the season last year, and the win over Delaware we were able to carry that momentum into offseason training, into summer training, and then into preseason. And our guys referenced that quite a bit amongst themselves as well, just to have that emotion, because it wasn't a different group of guys that played against Delaware than we had on the field the previous couple weeks. It was just a different attitude and a more consistent play. So we're excited about that, and our guys, like I said, definitely showed up, and we're out to prove something to everybody, not only everybody out there, but also to themselves.
Now flipping sides of the ball defensively, Joe Trainer's group returns a lot of players. Probably the biggest losses were in the secondary. You had a couple of freshmen really step up and help you throughout the game. But talk about, I think, what the defense has done here in Villanova over the last probably 4 to 5 years, has been able to stop the run and try to make these teams one-dimensional. And it looked like your unit did a very good job of that on Saturday.
That's where we start with everything on defense, and that's Joe's mindset. We want to stop the run. When we go against our own defense in spring practice and or preseason practice, when we're going good on good, they're always yelling at us, you can't run on us, you can't run on us, kind of thing, as far as the defensive players talking to our offensive players. They say that all the time. So that's where we definitely try to start, and we're able to minimize Temple's running attack, which did make them a little more one-dimensional. And like you said, we graduated 3 of our 5 defensive backs. It would have been 4 had Rob Roll not gotten hurt. So he was another one of those injured guys that we were able to get back for this year, which helps tremendously because he's the quarterback of the defense back there. He gets the other 4 guys lined up in our secondary all the time. So just his presence being in there is helpful, not only that he's a good player as well.
And then you talk about that, and unfortunately you lose Julian Williams early in the game, one of your returning starters, so that could have put a lot of pressure on some younger guys. But you mentioned the injuries from last year, Rob being out. It did give some other guys an opportunity to get experience, and then doing a good job in a recruiting trail and getting some freshmen that are able to step in right away. and thinking of Christian and Elijah, that really helps your unit.
No doubt. Those guys have been a nice surprise because you never know what you're going to get out of your freshman class, especially in an opening day game. It's a little different when they're doing well in practice, but when you're in there in that type of stadium, in that type of environment with a crowd like that, you never know how they're going to react, but they both reacted really well. Christian Benford, the freshman you mentioned, pretty much started and played the majority of the game. And then Elijah Trent, the one who made the huge play to seal the victory at the end of the game, he only played 5 plays. He was only in there on the last series, and he came up with that big play. So that was exciting for him to see. And then Jaquan Amos is a sophomore that got a lot of experience last year. So he's like having a returning starter, even though we did graduate 3 other guys in the secondary. But our secondary played big, and the freshmen, the way they came in there. And Nola Awapatu is also a good player for us. He's a redshirt sophomore in the secondary as well. So we're pretty young back there now, minus Quaddy.
And talk about the third phase in special teams. You had a couple issues in the kicking game, but I thought your freshman punter stepped up, had a booming 63-yard kick to start it, and then pinned him back inside the 10 late in the game to not give them a short field. Or sometimes a punter kicks that one out of the end zone, they get it back at the 20, and it's more comfort for the offense. So talk a little bit about your special teams. And obviously you had the missed extra point and the blocked field goal, but sometimes that could be a breakdown up front. It could be a kick too low. It could be a lot of issues.
Well, or all of the above, okay? Because a couple of the kicks did come out a little low than they should have, and on the one that got blocked for the extra point, there was a little too much penetration inside as well, as far as the guy getting a good push up the field and getting his hand on the ball. The block for the scoop and score, obviously we got to get that stuff corrected. Some of our protection needs to get cleaned up a little bit. Our guys got a little too high and let the Temple guys, who are pretty big and strong inside, get underneath our pads and push us back a little bit too much. And then Kresge, he did a great job last year. He was something like 9 of 11 on field goals last year. He only missed 1 extra point the whole season. So I'm not worried about him. We're going to get him corrected and get it going in the right direction. And then Nate Fondacaro, the freshman you're talking about, punter, he started off the game with a booming punt. Probably almost outkicked the coverage a little bit because they returned it about 20 yards. But the last kick he had to pin them on the 8-yard line was huge. That dropped in there really nice, and he did a good job. And, we'll get him cleaned up with the kickoff stuff. I think he overcompensated with his kickoffs and duck hooked a couple of them, and that last one that went out of bounds, we'll get that fixed because obviously we don't want them starting to drive on the 35.
And I got to give a shout out to Chucky Smith on the coverage teams too. You get that nice pump, but if he makes that first guy miss, you never know. He breaks that for 15 or 20 yards and really sets him up. Your special teams coverage units did a really good job.
Yeah, and you mentioned Chucky by name. Chucky's also the guy that had to come in and fill in for Julian Williams and play our spur position when Julian got kicked out for that targeting call in the first half. But Chucky was also our special teams player of the day. He made a couple tackles on kickoff as well. So you'll see him, and his name will be called pretty regularly on our special teams units.
Okay, Coach, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back to wrap up the Temple game. It's Talking Villanova Football with head coach Mark Ferrante. We'll be back with more after this on 610 ESPN. Back to talking Villanova football with head coach Mark Ferrante. We're kind of recapping the Wildcats' exciting 19-17 win over the Temple Owls at Lincoln Financial Field on Saturday. Coach, you go in the locker room, it's 13-10. You know, from a yardage standpoint, probably from a physical standpoint, you outplayed the team, but you're only up 3 points. I guess, what's your mindset going in at halftime? Are you happy, a little disappointed, and what did you relay to your ball club?
Well, what I told the guys at halftime is to just stick together and stay focused because, you know, statistics don't mean anything, right? Yards gained, all that stuff doesn't mean anything. What matters is points for and points against, and a lot of times, you know, the turnover battle. We win the turnover battle, and neither team had a turnover in the first half. However, a block kick for a scoop and score might as well be equivalent to a turnover. So I just told them to stick together and hang in there, and we'll be okay coming out of the second half. And sure enough, they were able to do that, and that's something they were talking about as well.
And what happens, you know, I think the theory behind these FCS versus FBS teams, due to the number of scholarship limitations you guys face against these teams, that late in the fourth quarter, into a fourth quarter of a game, they're going to have the extra depth that's going to hopefully they think will wear down the FCS team. You guys are able to come back in the fourth quarter, win the ball game, create 2 turnovers late in the game. Talk a little bit about the mindset. Now, you guys go down. You go down 17-13 after from a Villanova perspective, outplaying them most of the game. Your team, the perseverance is there, the desire is there, and those guys hang right in there and find a way. Well,
that's the tapping the rock mentality, right? Just keep grinding, keep persevering, and, you know, good things will happen. And you mentioned the word depth. We do have better depth this year, mainly because of what happened last year. You know, a lot of our young guys, freshmen, redshirt freshmen a year ago, were forced into playing a good part of last season. So now we have all those injured players back, the ones we mentioned earlier, and now we have guys underneath them or behind them that have had game experience, and there's no substitute for game experience. So that was good, and that also shows the maturity of our team. We have a few more fifth-year seniors back than we had a year ago. We have a decent senior class, 4-year senior class with, you know, guys like Forbes and Ethan Greenidge and Louis Chazar and all those guys that have played a lot of football for us. So we are fairly mature, and I think when you have a mature team with good leadership, you can stay calm in those adverse situations.
And you talk about adversity. You face 3 fourth-down situations in the game. You go 3 for 3. You turn one of them into the winning touchdown for the game. I guess talk about what the experience, the calmness of Zach Bernard's back there. He knows he has a Ryan Bell, a McClinton, another senior. He's got the experienced guys. And Jenga Hodge, who's been hurt a lot of his career, seemed to be able to get open in key spots for you in the game. Talk a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, those guys worked together for, like you said, a number of years, but also throughout the whole summer. And you know, Zach on the surface, if you see him in the hallway or not on the field, he's pretty calm, and he's a pretty calm and collected guy. But he's as competitive as they come. So when he's on the field, he's looking to make plays. And you know, he's not a big yeller, he's not a big rah-rah guy, but he definitely commands the attention of the offense. And then you mentioned the wide receivers. You know, Jarrett McClinton's into his 4th year, so he's played a lot of ball for us. Changa was having a great year last year until he got hurt in that very Temple game. He had 6 receptions for over 100 yards last year, and you know, he came back. I'm sure he was excited to play them again this year and to do well. And we had a couple near misses to him too. I know Zach would like to have 1 or 2 throws back to put it on Changa and some of the corner routes that we had. And Ryan Bell and Zach, they talk about the B&B connection all the time. You know, that's his favorite target. Matter of fact, there was one play just before half that Bell was wide open down the middle of the field, and I don't know how Zach didn't see him. He threw it a different target, and he usually looks for him first. So I'm not sure how we missed that one, but, you know, to have him make that first touchdown reception for Zach, I know those two were pretty excited about that.
So you take the lead in the fourth quarter, and then, you know, Temple starts moving the ball. They get into your territory, and then obviously your 50-year senior linebacker, Jeff Steve, steps up and makes a terrific interception. And that really, I think, kind of turned the tide, because they're probably 1 or 2 first downs away from attempting a field goal to take the lead back, and Steve makes a great play defensively.
Yeah, Steve's a good player, man. He gets all over the field. You know, I've never seen someone come out of coverage as fast as him. Like if the quarterback scrambles or if they're trying to sprint out pass, he'll come out and be the secondary contained man, and he gets there. I've never seen somebody close. The last guy that I saw close like him on a quarterback was probably Don Cherry, you know, who's another good linebacker for us in the past. But Steve was our leading tackler, or tied for our leading tackler the last 2 seasons. He just makes a lot of plays. He's very instinctive. And, he's one of the fifth-year guys, so he's played a lot, and he's one of our captains as well. So that goes to show you what the team thinks of him.
No doubt. And then you pin him deep with the punt that we talked about. And talk about Elijah. You said he plays 5 plays in the game. I guess I'll ask you, what's he doing in the game then at the big point of the game? And how about that kid making a huge play, going up and getting the ball at the height of the flight and coming down with it with 2 hands?
Well, he has great ball skills. We really liked him as a receiver. The reason we recruited him as a defensive back is because we had a commitment from a receiver, and we were only taking 1 receiver in last year's class. So we kept recruiting him because we liked his athleticism and thought we could work him in the secondary. And but he has great ball skills. His high school highlight film is mostly wide receiver plays, one-handed grabs, all that stuff. So he's real skilled, athletically. We just weren't 100% sure if he was ready. But, Jaquan is the one corner, and he played a lot of snaps, and then Christian Benford's the other corner. And, we're trying to get them a little rest throughout the game. And Nola Awapetu is another guy, but he has a little bit of a groin situation right now, so he wasn't 100%. And, Elijah was in there, like you said. That was something we talked about as a staff. And if you heard some of the comments on the headphones, you'd be surprised because we didn't ask him to press coverage either.
He was right up on him.
He was right up on the guy, and that's good. I guess he's got pretty good confidence. But that was a really good play he made on the ball. He went up and got it, and like I said, he's a really good athletic receiver type guy, and we're hoping he'll turn into a really good corner for us.
Which led to a great eruption on your sideline, a wonderful feeling for your staff and your kids. And we'll be back. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be joined by senior running back Aaron Forbes, who had over 100 yards against the Temple Owls on Saturday. It is Talking Villanova Football with head coach Mark Ferrante. Back with more after this on 610 ESPN. We're joined by senior running back Aaron Forbes from Newburgh, New York, one of the 4 captains on this year's team. And Aaron did himself proud on Saturday. 16 carries I had him for 112 yards. Now, Dean Kennefic gave him 111, so we're going to talk to Dean tomorrow when we get back. But, Aaron, you had a great game, obviously. We're talking about being a senior leader now. We're talking about kind of moving forward to next week, but we'll recap a little bit. Just talk about that first play of the game. Coach Venuto calls your number. You break off a big one. How'd it feel good?
Yeah, it felt very good because considering last year at Temple, Coach Venuto constantly reminded the running backs. Last year, we didn't have a run over 10 yards last year. So Coach Ferrante hinted at that earlier. when he said we struggled in the run game last year. So it kind of was a confidence builder, not only for me but the whole group. For them to see that I can break off a big run like that, so that now that they know that they knew that they could do that. So it was honestly just a big confidence booster for the whole offense as well.
You ended up having 3 different running backs have runs of over 10 yards with good Zach and also I apologize, I'm missing the
Covington.
Justin Covington. Yep.
Yeah, no, it was good, and that was Aaron's 4th 100-yard rushing game in his career. So I'm sure there will be more to come as long as we give him the ball 16 times a game, right? But we got a good group of running backs back there, and I'm really proud of Aaron the way he's matured over his years. He's a young guy. He's a 4-year senior. He's not a redshirt senior, and he's not even 21 yet. He won't be 21 till the end of the month in September. So pretty young guy, and that just goes to show what the team thinks of him to elect him. The other captains are all 5th-year seniors. You got Quaddy, you got Zach, and you got Steve there as the other 3 captains along with Aaron. So for the team to elect Aaron as a captain, that speaks volumes on Aaron's leadership skills and obviously what the team thinks of him.
Aaron, you mentioned Coach Ferrante and Coach Ferrante talking about unable. Well, your coach in his previous life coached the offensive line here for a long time. So talk about that unit up front. Obviously, they were challenged by Coach Ferrante and Coach Ferrante this week. Hey, we weren't able to really, I think it was 1.9 yards a carry last year against Temple, and it wasn't going to be the same this year. Talk about your guys up front.
I love the guys we have up front. This year, this O-line may possibly be the best O-line I've run behind since I've been in college. There's a lot of young guys there as well. Like we have I think our left guard, MJ Dumas. He stepped up very, very, very big against Temple last week. I'm just very excited to see what they could do, like coming along in the next couple of games as well.
Might be our largest line as well. You got Ethan Greenwich at left tackle. He's about 335. You got Brandon Hittner at right tackle. He's about 310, 6'6", 310. MJ, we actually moved to right now because Louis at left with Ethan. Okay. So Louis a 4-year starter. Ethan's a 4-year starter. We got Paul Gratton, who's a redshirt sophomore playing center. He's pushing 300 pounds. And then you got MJ Dumas, who came in, unfortunately, as a freshman and had a knee injury, so he missed his whole first year with that surgery. And last year he started making moves, and then he had a great spring this past spring, and that earned him the starting nod for this year. So MJ Dumas has been a real nice surprise for us, and he's over 300 pounds. So we're pretty big up front right now.
Now, Aaron, as Coach mentioned, you named captain this year, but you've played a lot here since your freshman year. You've led the team in rushing the last 2 years. Talk a little bit about the role as a captain now and what that means to you in terms of do you need to be more vocal? Do you need to lead more by example? What are the things that you take when you hear, hey, I'm a captain of this team? What does that mean to you?
Well, before, I more considered myself a leader by example. I wasn't very vocal, but considering the other captains that we have this year with Jeff Steve, Zach Minarchek, and Quaddy Roll, they're not very vocal, so I just took it upon myself to carry that vocal role, and I'm honestly enjoying it, and I think that I've grown as a player with becoming more vocal and becoming more of a leader. So I'm actually enjoying being the captain, and taking the leadership role wasn't that hard as I expected it to be.
How's he doing, Coach?
He's done a great job. No, as he mentioned, Zach is not very talkative at all. He's competitive, but not very talkative. Quaddy is pretty talkative, but more to the defense, more to the back end guys. And then Steve's one of them other quiet assassin type guys playing linebacker. So Forbes, he's done a great job, and that's something that I think, as he just mentioned, and I mentioned earlier, I think the fact that he had been elected captain by his peers, by his teammates, really helped him become the player that he is right now, and also the leader that he is right now, because he's done a great job. I see Aaron interacting with everybody on the team, not just the running backs, not just the O-line, not just the offensive players. I've noticed it during preseason when we're in the dining hall. He could be sitting with some of the guys on defensive side of the ball and so on. So he's done a phenomenal job crossing all the lines and interacting with everybody on the team, and I think that is because the guys voted him as the captain.
And I always think, your captains, your name's kind of early in the year, but we're going to have Coach Tucker up later, who has you guys all summer. But really, the rest of the coaching staff's not around. So it's kind of Coach Tucker and the 4 captains are kind of running this thing and pushing each other and demanding of each other. And talk a little bit about your offseason. We were talking earlier, leading in that first game. You guys, you go to spring ball, and then you're here for summer school, and you're getting ready. You're waiting all that time for that first Saturday to come. And talk about all that goes into it. As fans, we get to see you guys out in the lake playing great and winning a huge game over Temple. But talk to the fans about all that goes into preparing for that big game.
Well, the regular offseason has a lot, and it involves a lot. But our offseason was actually pretty hectic this year. It was very unusual. We went through like 2 equipment managers. Coach Tucker, we're glad to have him now, but we had another strength coach as well, and then he stepped in like middle of June, I think. So it was kind of hectic, but we handled it and just hit the ground running, you know. And I think that it just shows how mature we are as a whole team, because we handled that and just didn't miss a step. And yeah, our off season is just perfect, honestly.
Yeah, they were throwing a lot of adversity this summer.
That's what I was going to say, and maybe that's a good sign for your group, because during a long season you're going to face adversity at some point, and hopefully these guys are ready to handle it.
Yeah, and they handled it the other day, because we got behind in Temple, and that was a little adversity after that block field goal they scored on, and then they took the lead, as you mentioned, in the fourth quarter. That is adversity right there on the field, and these guys were able to be mature enough to overcome that and win the game. So that speaks volumes of our leadership for sure.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back. It's Talking Villanova Football with head coach Mark Ferrante. Back with more after this on Welcome back to Talking Villanova Football with head coach Mark Ferrante. We're joined by senior running back Aaron Forbes. Aaron, we're going to kind of fast forward here to Saturday coming up. We're going to head up the Northeast Extension and take on Lehigh, a team who battled the Wildcats last year, 38-35 game. What's your thoughts on the Mountain Hawks?
They're a very tough team. They're very, very high-powered when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. I consider this game like a very high-scoring game every single year, and a lot of people, like outside people, not people on our team, but a lot of people consider Lehigh a smaller school, so they kind of look past them, but we're never looking past them. We know it's going to be like a gunslinger fight, what they call, where quarterbacks go against each other, like 2 good quarterbacks. So we're looking forward to this game this Saturday. And
Coach, we'll get into Lehigh later a little bit, but your just initial thoughts on what you've seen, obviously breaking down some tape on Lehigh.
Yeah, this is the second year in a row that we're going up and playing them at third place. So, they play well at home. They won the Patriot League the last 2 years in a row. They got to the playoffs last year because they won the Patriot League. And, they scored more points against us last year than anybody we faced the whole year. So they do have a high-powered offense with a lot of weapons back. We'll touch base on that, like you said, a little later. And their defense does some things schematically that are trying to, they move around a lot. They blitz a lot and they move a lot and those type of things. So they try to mess around with our schemes on offense.
And Aaron, you mentioned the perception of people outside the program. Hey, they just went and played an FBS school in Temple. Now they're going to play a Patriot League team like Lehigh, who's a playoff team every year, the last 2 years for sure. Talk about how, I'll use the word complacency doesn't set in after a huge win over Temple. All the students are telling you how great you guys are this week, I'm sure, because as an alum and a fan, it was just a great win for the program. But talk about how you as a captain keep the guys, the focus there, that mindset of next play, next game, Lehigh.
Well, that's just a sign of maturity. You got to think it doesn't really matter if you're going against Temple or Lehigh. No matter who we played the first game, we were going to be very excited and very energetic to go into there and get a W. But honestly, it's just about being mature. There's not really like a secret formula. You just have to make sure that you have a clear mind, and each week is a new week. So you could win or lose.
We give them 24 hours to celebrate. We give them the rest of that day, and then when we get the film watched on Sunday, we're done with the film probably 3:30, 4 o'clock on Sunday, and the game ended the day before about 3:30 or so. So there's your 24-hour window of celebration. After that, we told them it's all about preparation for the next opponent. So that's the mindset we had, and we had a good practice today. They're off on Monday. Some guys came in to watch film on their own, but it's an off day from practice and those types of things. We're just game planning all day as a staff. And then there was a lot more guys coming in watching film today, and we had a good practice on both sides of the ball this morning. So it's a little different though. As I told the team today in practice, for your preseason, for your opener, you have all of preseason to get ready, right? So you have a lot of time. You have 3 weeks basically to get ready. Now you're doing some install things. You're not really focused on your opening opponent for the whole 3 weeks, but you have more than 3 days. So you go from 3 weeks of practice or preparation for your opener. Now you got 3 days of preparation for your second game. So we got to go out there and do a good job on Wednesday, Thursday, and finish it up on Friday and be ready to go out there and execute at a high level.
Well, Aaron, congratulations on the great win over Temple. Best of luck this week up at Lehigh. We're going to take another quick break. It's Talking Villanova Football with head coach Mark Ferrante. We'll be back with Coach Mike Tucker after this. More on 610 ESPN. Back to Talking Villanova Football with head coach Mark Ferrante. You may have an injury this week. Might be Ryan Fannin. He might be out. Looked like he lost his voice calling that interception late in the game by Elijah Chen. But, Coach, we're joined by, I guess, the newest member of your staff, your strength and conditioning coach, Mike Tucker. Mike, welcome on.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Mike's got an interesting background. He's been in a few different places, but a local guy. Went to Downingtown East High School, and I guess his last stop was at San Jose State. So, Coach, talk about the process. How'd you find Mike, and what's he been doing for your program?
Yeah, Mike's been a godsend for us because, as we were talking about with Aaron, we faced a lot of adversity this summer Brian Trace, our old strength coach, left, and then we had an intern running the month of June workouts for us. Russell Wooten was running it as we were trying to figure out what we're going to do next. And then Ross Pennypacker, our defensive line coach, knew Mike because Mike also coached at Kutztown when Ross was at Kutztown, the defensive coordinator up there. So he's like, hey, if we need a guy, I know a guy who's local. And now at the time, I think when we first started talking about it, I think Mike still was at San Jose. But then where he came home, and next thing I know, he's in my office, and I'm meeting him one day informally, and then he's in there working out in the weight room with Ross one day, so I met him for a second time. And then once we got the approval to go ahead and, get an interim strength coach for the month of July, which, is kind of crazy because Mike said, hey, I'll come in and do it, not knowing if he's going to have a job or not at the end of July. So fortunately, everything worked out. Mike was, as I mentioned, a godsend for us because, as you mentioned when Aaron was up here, the summer training program is so critical, and they're with them more than anybody. The strength coaches are with our team in that 8-week phase more than anybody. So Russell handled the first 4 weeks, and then we got Mike in to handle the month of July, the second 4 weeks, and our whole team is there in July. All 90-plus guys are there in July. So he came in, hit the ground running, and, the concern that I had going into the Temple game, and Mike and I talked about it a lot, what type of conditioning were we in? Not just, physically as far as strength, but the cardio stuff. In an opening game, you never know if the guys are going to be ready to go on those 9, 10, 12-play drives on offense or defense, and it looked like we handled that part pretty well. So all hats off to Mike for sure.
Mike, talk a little bit about, as Coach mentioned, you kind of jump in midstream. I want to talk about the kind of kids you've inherited here, and work ethic, things that you want to instill in them, and talk a little bit about the group you've inherited here in July.
Yeah, it's really been great from that aspect. Great kids. The Villanova University, obviously, the academics, it kind of takes care of itself. Extremely hard workers in that aspect. Jumping in, like you said, in the middle of summer had its challenges, right? Building that rapport. Understanding when to ease off a little, when to drop the hammer, things like that. But the kids have been great, really responsive, and I couldn't ask to be in a better spot with them.
That's great. We had obviously Aaron up, one of our captains. Now, do you lean more heavily on your captains now, especially in your scenario where you don't have a chance to kind of learn these kids from freshman year on up and say, hey, do you lean on them a little bit? Hey, what's this old lineman over here like? How do you push him? How do you motivate him? Talk about a little bit about your style. You talk about like when you have to be the heavy, when you have to light up a little bit, and who you rely on for some help.
Yeah, you definitely look to those older guys, because they've been here for 4 or 5 years. They know how it's been, but then you have your own style as well. So you give them a little what they want, but you also give them what they need. So sometimes they don't really like that as much.
Hey, Coach, you talked about, I guess similar to position coaching, strength and conditioning people have a style or a system they like to employ. I'm sure when you met with Mike to go over that, it's something you feel confident and comfortable with. It's the style that Mike uses.
Yeah, definitely. And we talked to a couple guys, to be honest with you, and there was a few guys that we liked, but whenever you have that personal connection, like Ross Pennypacker, one of your own coaches on your staff, knows Mike personally, that always is going to make a difference in who you're going to go with. So that was really helpful from that perspective as well. And, I was probably around a little more this summer than the players wanted me to be, quite frankly. But, it's something that, we just had to evaluate as we went along. And it didn't take me long because, as I mentioned, Mike originally in the beginning of July was hired on an interim basis. I didn't take very long to decide that once this position opens, who I was going to go with.
Right. And Mike, you talked a little bit about preseason now. You had 3 weeks. Pretty much you have all of July now, all of camp. Talk about a week now. It's season now. You're going. Your role, I guess, from Saturday at 3:30 when that final gun goes off, getting these guys ready to go back at it, 7 days later against Lehigh. Yeah,
exactly. So they come in Sunday morning, and you have the spectrum. Some guys like Aaron who have 16 carries are a little more banged up than some of the other guys. So you flush out the bad stuff on Sunday, and then Monday's their day off, and then they come in Tuesday, and that's our heavier day in the weight room, and then Thursday. So we'll lift 3 times during the week, and then Thursday you see as kind of like a primer, a game ready, a lot of speed, fast stuff, less heavy stuff, keep their legs fresh. But we focus a lot on recovery and regenerative movements, which the guys are starting to buy into more and more, like simple things like breathing, that some of the guys are like, oh, we're doing that. But now they're starting to see all the benefits of all the recovery stuff that we do to get their bodies feeling good.
and you see a big change. Being on campus all summer, you see these guys walking around with jugs of water, the hydration piece, the nutrition piece. That I guess in the old days, he used to think of the strength. He's the guy, and they're watching him do the bench press. Well, it's so much more than that now with the nutrition and the hydration piece. I guess you mentioned the word recovery. Talk about a little bit the meal plan, what they're doing eating-wise this week, what they're doing to keep themselves hydrated.
So, the hydration aspect's huge. We'll actually implore different Gator lights starting Thursday, Friday, Saturday pregame. In addition, the halftime protocol with, like you mentioned, all the hydration stuff, Gatorade Chews, Gatorade Primes, and as well as bars and shakes. We make weight gain shakes for the weight gain guys. So it's an everyday thing. Even on their non-lifting days, they're getting something from me. They see me a lot more than they want to, that's for sure.
Coach, talk just about the evolution of that position. So you've been coaching for 35, 40 years now almost in college football. Talk about, from back when you started as a GA, I guess it was Lafayette, and you got started. And now all the way as a head coach here in FCS. The evolution, I guess, of Mike's position.
Yeah, no doubt. I think when we played way back when, that's a long time ago, I don't think we're allowed to have water. I don't think they allowed us to have water. They would throw us salt tablets on the way into the locker room, and that's about it. And, it's so much different. Just everything that you do. The movements. You're not just in there on the bench squat and power clean the whole day. You're doing all kind of auxiliary exercises and those type of things. And they spend a ton of time, with the bands as far as stretching and those type of things, kind of like yoga type movements as well. And, the regeneration that you do on the off days, you come in on your own, and you got these foam rollers or these PVC rollers, and you see guys with lacrosse balls underneath their foot rolling out the bottom of their foot, and I'm like, this is from head to toe, right? And then you get, like Mike was saying, the breathing right and the mental aspect of things. But that's what it's evolved to. We'd like to try to get back to, we don't have them right now, but a lot of programs do, and I'm sure you've probably seen it with the Eagles on TV and stuff. We also used to have the GPS systems and the heart rate monitors just to see, you track guys, how far are they running in practice? When should you pull back on a guy because he's done 5 miles worth of running in one practice and you don't want to wear him out before the game and so on. So we're hoping we can get that part of the science back in it as well. I know Mike has experience with that. Mike, just real quick for all the people that are listening and all the people that are here today, we mentioned Downingtown East, you played ball, then you went on and played at Holy Cross. Why don't you give them the rest of the places you've been at, because you've been at some pretty impressive places between Kutztown, San Jose, and then our program as well. So where else were you?
Yep, so when I played at Holy Cross, I also assisted in the weight room there, and then 5 days after I graduated, I was at North Dakota State.
They had a pretty good quarterback there, I heard.
Yeah. So Carson was there when I was there. Great guy. Everything they say is not enough. So then right after that, I was the head strength coach and defensive line coach at Kutztown for 2 years. And then I was at Clemson with the track and baseball. So I stepped away from football for a little bit, but that got me a lot more experience with rotational athletes as well as the speed element with a great ACC track school like that. And then the last 2 years I was at San Jose State back with football. So.
Well, Mike, you've been a great addition to the staff. Coach Ferrante speaks so highly of you. We appreciate you taking some time and joining us tonight. We're going to take a quick break. It's Talking Villanova Football with head coach Mark Ferrante. Back with more after this on 610 ESPN. Football with head coach Mark Ferrante, and we'll kind of transition, coach, ahead to this weekend. The Mountain Hawks from Lehigh. We mentioned last year's game, a 38-35 win for the Wildcats. An explosive offense, scored more points on Villanova last year than any other team, and he obviously played in the best conference in CAA football. So, in the CAA. So it's obviously a very explosive offensive team. We'll start on that side.
Yeah, they do a good job. Coach Cohen, Andy Cohen's been up there for a long time. Actually, a good friend of our program. We know him really well. He's good friends with Sam Venuto, our offensive coordinator. And like we just said earlier, they've been in the playoffs the last 2 years, so they know how to win. They have an explosive offense. They have a lot of guys returning from that offense, namely the quarterback, Mays, and the running back, Bragalone, and both of them finished in the top 5 in the country last year. Mays, top 5 passer with over 3,800 yards, and I'm not sure how many touchdowns, but might have been as many as 40. And then Bragalone was a top 5 running back, had over 1,200 yards rushing last year. So they're a good program. They do a great job. They know how to win. They're playing home, so that's going to, be in their favor as well. So we just got to go up there and hopefully execute a little cleaner than we did this past week. Hopefully we can put as much points on the board as we did against them last year, and then our defense hold them out of the end zone.
You mentioned Bragalone. He was the Patriot League Offensive Player of the Year in the preseason. Now the all-time leading rusher in Lehigh history, as he had a big game against St. Francis on Saturday, who Lehigh wins the game 21-19, blocking a field goal late in the game. They block a 30-yard field goal with only 33 seconds left to hold on and beat St. Francis, who we played in the playoffs a couple years, a quality program as well. So, we talked earlier about, Joe Traynor trying to kind of stop the run here, but this is a pretty well-balanced team. They're two-dimensional. You mentioned Mays and Bragalone. So does that change Sam Venuto's mindset? Is it, you did a great job of time of possession in the Temple game. Do we try to maybe take some more time off the clock, or you just see what's out there and go with what's open? Yeah,
I think that'll be our MO just about for anybody that we're playing, not just someone with explosive offense or anyone who, like Temple, is maybe has more depth or a higher match team or something like that. Now, we want to try to control the ball anyway. We want to have our balanced attack, and we want to make sure our defense isn't out there too long and keep them well rested. So in this last week, I think our offensive linemen played 80 to 81 plays, somewhere around there if you count the special teams plays, and then our defense we're on the field for about 55 plays. So we would love to do that week in and week out if we could control the ball the way we did this past weekend. But they do a great job. They do a great job up there. They did lose a couple real experienced wideouts. One of their wideouts, Pelletier, had over 100 receptions last year for over 1,000 yards. And then the other wideout who graduated, or I think he actually went somewhere as a fifth-year grad transfer, Middle Tennessee State, I believe, is where he went. He had almost 70 receptions last year. So that's a lot of, wide receiver production from those two guys. But they're going to rotate guys through. I mean, you saw how many wideouts and how many different guys that Zach was able to throw the ball to in our game versus Temple. So they have other guys that they can spread the ball around to, and as well as hand it off to Bragalone.
And then the Mountain Hawks defensively do a really good job stopping the run against St. Francis, limiting to 58 yards in the whole ball game. So does that talk a little bit about offensive? What do they try to do up front that's going to try to slow down your run game?
Well, this situation here where we're not opening with Lehigh like we did a year ago where we have them in the second game, that St. Francis game is really helpful because he does have a new D coordinator. Andy made a change on the the defensive side of the ball. So at least we do have one game to see what their style is this year. It's similar to what they were doing last year. I think they're going to blitz a little more based off what I saw last week against St. Francis. They're moving their line around a lot. They're doing a lot of twisting. They're bringing some corner blitzes, some safety blitzes, obviously linebacker blitzes. That's pretty common there. And they're moving their defensive front. They're forward down. They're moving them a lot. They're slanting. They're angling. They're trying to just, we're a heavy zone team, which a lot of teams are these days. So all that movement can sometimes create problems for a zone attack.
Yeah, so, you're talking about a well-balanced team. I believe they were picked second in the Patriot League in the preseason. So this is a quality team you're going up against. You can start 2 weeks straight on the road. Obviously, you guys are going to travel up the day of the game. It's only, 45, 50 minutes up to Bethlehem. But talk about, I guess, as a head coach, you worry about everything. But what's the top of your list this week with this group?
Well, the thing for this group is coming off such a big opening day win to make sure we can stay focused on the task at hand. And, as I mentioned a little while ago, that game's behind us. We got to forget about that game, and we got to go out and prepare like we've never prepared before, because we still have to become more consistent. in all phases. You know, we had some mistakes last week. So, you know, when you're watching the game and when we're statistically lead the statistics the way we did last week, you think everything's going great, but it wasn't. You know, we have some correctable things to take care of, not just in the special teams, but on both offense and defense. So the key is, can we get better from week 1 to week 2? That's what you're always focusing on, and then make sure. And, you know, we talk about it all the time, but, you know, sometimes 18 to 23-year-old guys or, you know, kids will be kids sometimes. You know, we can't afford to look past anybody. And I think we learned that last year, and I think our guys are more mature this year. So, you know, the thing is just to make sure we can keep our guys focused and have a real good week of preparation and practice and go out there and perform at a consistent high level.
We're going to take one last break, and then we'll be back with Coach's final thoughts here as the Wildcats prepare for their game. 12:30 up in Bethlehem against Lehigh. It's Talking Villanova Football with head coach Mark Ferrante. Back with more after this on 610 ESPN. Welcome back to Talking Villanova Football. Head coach Mark Ferrante. Coach, the NFL season kicks off right here in Philadelphia on Thursday night with the Falcons and the Eagles, and once again, your program well represented in the NFL.
Yeah, we're excited about the guys we have, and we wish them all well starting their opening season with Ben Aguilan up there with the New York Jets in his 8th year. We got Tano Passanio out there with the Chiefs as well, starting his 2nd year. And great news we got last weekend. Austin Calitro made the 53-man roster with the Seattle Seahawks, so that's exciting for him. And then I just got a text from Brad Seaton today. Brad Seaton was picked up by the Cleveland Browns on their practice squad. So real excited for those guys as they're getting ready to start their seasons.
And Coach, we had 32,000 people down at the Link. Villanova, the Nova Nation came out in full force. I actually believe it's a shorter trip to get up to Bethlehem with traffic than it is to get to the Link. Talk about the support your program would love to see up there on Saturday.
Mileage-wise, it's a little longer, but you're right. Sometimes you might get hit with a little heavy traffic. And, you know, it was super to see. We had the band, Villanova band there, Villanova Cheer, Villanova Dance, Nova Nation. Some of the folks are here tonight. We're at the game, obviously, as well. So hopefully we can get as many people up to the Lehigh Valley and go to the Goodman Stadium up there in Bethlehem and support the Wildcats for sure.
Coach, thanks for a great first show. Best of luck on Saturday. Let's hope we'll be back here next Tuesday with the 2-0 Wildcats.
Thanks, Steve. That'd be great.
We look forward to seeing everyone next Tuesday night right here for Talking Villanova Football with Coach Ferrante at the Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill in East Norton. This wraps up our show tonight. Thanks to Joe Gaines and studio engineer Ryan Lennox. This Saturday, Cats face the Lehigh Mountain Hawks. Game time is 12:30. We'll be on the air with our pregame show at 12:15. For Coach Mark Ferrante, this is Steve Pannone. Have a great night. This is 610 ESPN.